Okay, we're in the kitchen. Okay, we're going to do some videos on fermenting and sourdough, but I thought this happens to be what you're about to do in the kitchen, so why don't we just film this and we'll see what happens
we
here.
can tack it together. So this is the end process. Okay. So this is a multi-grain sourdough that's been fermenting all day. It's been doing its bulk ferment. So it was nice and full at the top here, and I've knocked it down, and this is an awesome scraper for the dough. And when I show you how I mix it, I've got an awesome
special bread scraper?
Yes. So I'm going to pop that out. And this is called a banneton. It's a rattan banneton, and that is seasoned with corn flour to make it nice and smooth. So I'm just going to shape the sourdough. So the sourdough starts with a starter. You wake up your starter from the fridge, and we can talk about that at a later time. And the bulk ferment is probably about 4 to 6 hours. So this has been fermenting on the kitchen table and rising. Oops, we've got to put some flour in the bottom. So this is going to be proving, and this banneton makes a beautiful shape. So you're going to get it really makes it look quite professional and artisan. So nothing really fancy about that.
Is this something specific for bread?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sourdough making. Right.
Yes. Not necessarily sourdough, but it holds the shape of the loaf, and that's going to do another short ferment. So when it sort of reaches with a nice soft peak at the top, then it'll be ready to bake. So I'll cover that with a clean tea towel.
So how long will this next ferment be?
An hour.
Okay.
20 minutes. It just all depends on the temperature, the humidity. It's alive. You're working with a live culture, so it does its own thing.
So we'll know it's done by the size.
By it should have a nice rise on it, and when you touch it and poke it, it should just come back a little bit. If you've over fermented it and it's starting to flow over the sides, and you touch it and go, it's over fermented, you can rescue it and reshape it and try it one more time. If you over ferment it in the second ferment, it's going to be a quite heavy and dense loaf. So you want to get that right. And this is something really special. This is called a Schlemmertopf, or a Roman clay baker, and it makes for a really beautiful, awesome crust. So you soak this in water for a short period of time, put it into a cold oven, and then you heat it up. I heat it up about 250 degrees and get it really, really piping hot, and try to time it so that that's going to be really hot when that gets to its peak. And then you're going to pop that out onto a piece of parchment paper upside down, and then lift that into there, and then pop it into the oven. And because it's been soaked, it creates a little bit of steam inside the Schlemmertopf.
Schlemmertopf sounds like a German word.
It is.
Okay, and then that's what it will bake in, and
that's what it's going to bake in.
Right.
So we'll be able to see when that comes out.
And then, is this all in preparation? We'll be eating this tonight, or are you eating this tomorrow?
No, that would be ready to eat. Perhaps we can sample that. Have that with some honey or some jam.
Oh, great!
Yeah, and we've got some ciabatta for our dinner tonight. So we'll slice that open. This is very good for bruschetta, for soups.
Is this also a sourdough?
This is sourdough. So everything that I make is with sourdough.
Oh, that looks wonderful.
So it's got some nice big holes in it, just what you want with a ciabatta, and that's really nice for soup. So we're having soup tonight, and the ciabatta, and we've got some bruschetta.
And did you follow the same process?
No. So this is different. So tomorrow I've got plenty of starters. So this is a really active starter. So that would need, if we're going to mix something a little bit later, I would have to feed that again so that it doesn't go flat. And we can feed it tonight, and we can do some mixing So you can see then that this is the end process. You can see the beginning process.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
And
so
then put it all
that's
together.
active. You can see the tight little bubbles.
And this starter will we use to make the ciabatta,
Yes.
or to make
Everything. Yeah, I do
Okay.
sweet doughs that you can make donuts, and the basis for German crumble cakes, pizza, pocket breads, crackers. I'll show you some crackers that I made. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah, I love. I love to eat sourdough. I've not tried to make it before.
So this was a pizza dough that I made, and I rolled it
Okay.
really thin. Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
And
that
it's got
smells- that
basil,
smells divine.
some basil pesto,
Oh,
and
you've roasted on it.
baked. Yeah.
Yum.
So that one for Julie. Yeah.
Oh,
It's just awesome. It's very therapeutic, and it's so I don't use a bread maker. I just do everything by hand, and I've got the technique. Just I'm really happy with the process. It's working with. It's knowing the live culture, the principle of whether you're fermenting everything. You're working with a live culture,
Yeah.
and you can slow it down by putting it in.
Yeah.
If I'm fermenting overnight and it's coming into summer, I'll put it in an esky with an ice brick, just to slow it down a little bit so it's not over fermented by the morning. If I'm fermenting during the day, I can keep a closer eye on it. Because we're farming and sometimes things go astray during the day, I can speed it up by putting it in the oven with a pilot light on, or I can slow it down by putting it in an esky with an ice brick. So it's knowing when it's at its peak to be baking.
Okay. So if we're starting out, how long did it take you to get to know all those things?
Yeah, it's been a
Been a
little bit of a process, but because I had baked with yeast before, and the dry yeast, I understood a little bit about when something is looking right. The first time I got my sourdough starter, it didn't smell sort of really sour or fermenty, and I rang the lady that gave it to me, and she recommended that I feed it again, put it on the countertop, and then put it in the fridge. And so this is the dormant starter. We can talk about that next time. And I've been using the brown rice flour to feed the starter when it's dormant, and it makes for a really beautiful, active, pungent, sour starter. So this is dormant. That's in the fridge, and to wake it up, you take about a tablespoon, feed it equal quantities of flour and water, and feed it twice, and then you'll get to this active stage. So I can bake. Tomorrow I could bake. I could use I could make pizza, I could make ciabatta, I could make a grain bread. Reserve a little bit, feed it, and feed it again until I've got some more. So you could potentially bake every day using the same starter and just feeding it all the time. Then if you run out of time, or you've got everything that you wanted, you feed it again, you can put it back in the fridge. You could either use this all up because you've got your reserved starter, or you could feed it and put it back in the fridge.
Okay.
You never put your baby to bed on an empty stomach. That's the rule. And it would go dormant, and you could keep it dormant for, 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, so the idea is, I'm starting to see. So the dormant is what gives you that reserve.
Yes.
So you could go to it if you need to, if you've used all of this up.
Yes.
Or if you went
I
to
might have a
holidays,
stint.
you come back. That's where you start from again.
Well, I would probably take out what I want, make it active, and I might make 4 or 5 things, or I might just make 1 loaf and use everything up, and then not put any reserve because I've got this in the fridge. And then when I want to start again, 24 hours before you actually want to bake, you take it out and you wake it up, you feed it twice.
Right. So you don't have to bake every single day?
No. You don't have to become a slave to your dough.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns around the sourdough, the kefir, is that you then have to do something every day, and it's too much.
Yeah.
But you don't if you refer back to
if you understand that you can slow it down, you speed it up, you can make it dormant. you make it work for you.
All right, thank you. Good.
Right.
Well, we'll do something else again later
Sure.
tonight,
Very good.
and then we'll just
Yes.
piece all the bits together and see if we can make sense.
Yes.
But I like the idea of having a would you suggest having a mentor, like whoever you get it
Yes,
from first,
definitely.
to give you some
Definitely.
ideas? Okay.
Yeah.
That seems
find
good.
a friend.
Okay, we're here for the next stage. Okay, thanks, Mandy. What are we up to?
Yes. Okay. So we need to bake our bread. It has been proving, doing its second prove, or doing its proving in the banneton, and it is ready to go. So it has risen up above the line. It's got some nice spring to it. It hasn't collapsed when we touch it.
Do you want to come in closer and check the spring, Janine?
Yeah, the spring is very important. Yep.
Okay.
That's good. Okay, so the Schlemmertopf is very hot. I've probably wasted some power because we were having
Wow, that was hot.
That is hot.
I just want to say Schlemmertopf.
Schlemmertopf or Römertopf. Okay, so we'll take off the lid.
Oh, that looks scary hot. I think
That is oh, my zigzag knife, that's what we do. Okay, so tip your banneton upside down onto the parchment paper. Slip it and give a little slit. Pop that into the Schlemmertopf. So it's been in a very hot oven, and I'm going to turn it down to 200. And hey Siri, set the timer for 30 minutes.
Okay, 30 minutes and counting.
Okay, so 30 minutes with the lid on, and then 20 minutes with the lid off, and then you're going to have a beautiful, amazing loaf of bread. So that's our grain.
So let me just check. When it was heating up, it was heating up at 250.
Yeah, at the very hottest. At the very hottest. Now I had it going for a lot longer than, we were a bit disorganised.
Okay, but then you lower it down to 200 once it goes in.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the bread. We've gone to the back end of the bread, and tomorrow
we'll start
from the beginning.
And then we'll join it together so it makes sense.
And we're going to make a ciabatta now. So the ciabatta is more like a batter. So this is our active starter. You can see the little bubbles. It's nice and active. Okay. And we're going to take about 200 to 250 grams of the starter. And we're going to have 2 cups of filtered water. So whenever you're dealing with kefir and any fermented goods, you're going to need either filtered water or rainwater. So if you have chlorinated water, you can degas it by just letting it sit. You possibly boil it, or letting it sit and degas, and then use it. Also possibly filtered waters, because the chemicals can damage the bacteria, the healthy bacteria. So 2 teaspoons of salt. And 3.5 cups. Now I really like Wallaby flour because it's a single source wheat, and it's an Australian company, and I think it was originally a family owned in South Australia, and I'm really happy with it. You could go organic. It's not organic, but I'm happy with it. So this is Wallaby baker's flour, not a baker's mix, but a baker's flour. So we're going to have 3.5 cups of baker's flour or plain flour will do the job.
Do you happen to know what the difference is between baker's flour and plain flour?
Maybe the I don't know. Flours have different strengths in starches.
Okay.
Not really sure. Can't really comment intelligently on that one.
Have you tried making it with a spelt flour?
No. But you can. I think it would make a not ciabatta, but in the grain bread you can use different, and you can make a gluten-free sourdough if you have your sourdough gluten-free. And rice flour is a gluten-free option. And at one point I did keep a gluten-free starter and did make some gluten-free loaves.
Okay, but you need to have a different starter.
It has to be
So it has to
obviously
be
gluten-free.
because it's
Yes,
needs
especially
attuned to that particular.
That's right, and especially if someone has celiac, you can't be messing with that.
Come in close and see.
Right. So this is like this is going to have a very different consistency to the grain bread. Like the bread, you can hand work it. Where this one, I'm going to use this spatula, and I would work it until it's a little bit smooth. Leave it for about 20 minutes. Come back and give it another mix like this, sort of like stretching the glutens, and do that maybe 2 to 3 times, and then it will do a bulk ferment overnight. And because it's going to be overnight, the weather's getting a little bit warmer here, I'm going to put it in an esky or one of those insulated shopping bags with a ice brick, just to slow it down a little bit, because I don't want it to over ferment. I want it to have a nice silky, sort of like not a skin, but a silky appearance with big air bubbles. You don't want little tight air bubbles like you've got in the starter here.
So depending on the loaf that you're making, so because this is a ciabatta, that changes how you mix it. Is that right?
Yes, because you're not going to be able to handle that with your hands. It's too moist. It's more like a batter.
Oh, okay.
So when you come to bake it, you're going to pour it out onto a tray with the baking paper, and I'll use that bread scraping tool, and then you pour it out into like a slipper sort of loaf. Okay. And I get 2 of those, and I'll bake it in the bottom smaller oven. I just find it works well in there, and I'll cook them both at the same time for 200 degrees for 30 minutes.
And
this is a really simple bread to start off with, Sal.
Okay.
So we'll leave that for 20 minutes or so, and
okay. So
leave
while we're
overnight.
leaving it, is it going to rise?
It's not so much in the first 20 minutes, but it's just going to absorb the flour. I think it's called autolyzing, letting it absorb the flour, and you're getting a better idea of the consistency.
Okay, and then we'll mix again,
and then
you wait.
Then you give it another little mix. So you give it about 3 mixes with 20 minutes in between.
Okay.
And you'll see how it changes. Like it's a little bit rough, and by the third time, it's going to be silky and smooth.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Let's leave that. Oh, and now this is going to need another feed. Now we've got an option of either mixing a grain bread now, or feeding it and mixing it tomorrow. So we could then potentially, well, we're baking this one, so we've seen the tail end of that. So what I might do is feed this, and then we'll mix the grain bread in the morning
to get
to get the first half.
Okay.
So the principle, because I've used that would be enough to make another loaf if I was going to use it now, but it needs to be fed. It's starting to get hungry. So roughly the recipe that I have says equal quantities of flour and water.
Okay.
But I'm a little casual in my approach as you become a little bit more accustomed to it. So I'm not going to weigh it. You could weigh it, establish the weight of it, and then have equal quantities of the flour and the water.
You've done this a lot of times, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, that's confidence.
So I know that, see that's too dry, so I'm going to need more moisture. Ideally you shouldn't be using metal, but I mean I have, you wouldn't be leaving metal in there, but for this quick mix. And that's sort of like a similar consistency to the ciabatta.
Okay,
And so I would leave that then overnight, and it'll be really active and loose and bubbly in the morning.
So it seems so it's about timing. So you said if we were ready to then bake another loaf, we
Yes,
could have
I
just
could
gone
have
from
used
there,
all of that.
and we could have baked it again
and
tonight.
then used all of it up, and you've got no starter left over because I've got my reserve in the fridge.
Yeah.
When I wanted to bake in, say, 4 or 5 days' times, I would take out about a tablespoon of that, feed it a tablespoon of flour and equal quantities of water,
and bring it
feed
to
it a
life.
second time, so you're building the quantity up, and then you can feed it. You know, it's roughly about 4 to 6 hours. I mean, this is going to be left overnight, so that's going to be really active. It's going to be quite hungry in the morning,
Okay.
and that will have to be used up. So you can use that all up, and then you're finished with the starter. So
Okay, so we'll use it all up in the morning,
Yes.
and then we'll
Yes.
go through the process of the beginning stage of this.
mixing that, and so we're going backwards. So
And
that's
then
going to sit there. We're going to leave this for a little while, and we might mix it and maybe not film it, but we might film the third mix, because then you'll see. So if that looks sort of quite rough.
Yes.
But it will be smooth and silky by the third mix.
All right. Good. Thank you. Okay, Mandy, what are we doing?
Right, it's time to take our bread out. We've had 30 minutes with the lid on at 200 degrees, and we've had 20 minutes with the lid off, and this is the finished product.
That looks sensational. So it's
That's
pulled
going to be
in
very...
from the side.
And
It's hot.
she's hot.
Wow.
And
That looks
Yeah.
delicious. That's the multi-grain.
Yep, the Schlemmertopf is
Well, that's not so nice.
the secret. There, let's you should really let it sit for a little while before you cut it, but let's be patient and we'll give it a little.
So if you didn't have one of those, what's it called,
Schlemmertopf. Well, you
Schlemmertopf.
can
What
use
can
a
you
camp
do?
oven or a
Cast on.
Dutch oven.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or you can just use a loaf tin. But I personally think that baking it in an enclosed dish. Whoop, where was it?
Oh, it's a nice sound.
That's beautiful, crusty. There you go.
Yum. Delicious.
Proof will be in the eating. So that's very
Some
fresh.
fresh
And
butter, some sourdough.
normally it would be best to let it sort of sit, because you just squish it a bit.
And we need to mix the ciabatta
Yes,
dough for its
Yes.
last go.
that's right. Let's do that. Okay. So this has had this is a third mix. So we're just going to pull it
Oh,
away
I can
from
see
the...
it does
yeah,
look different.
yeah, nice and silky.
Yes.
Nice, beautiful and smooth. So you're just stretching the glutens. Yeah, so we've mixed it 3 times with about 20 minutes in between. And then this is going to do a bulk ferment. Now we're going to leave this overnight, and the temperature is a little bit warmer. So I'm going to put it in a insulated cooler with an ice brick, and that's just going to slow the ferment down. If I was going to do this during the day, I would leave it and watch it, and when it rises to the top and has like a shiny surface with some nice big bubbles, that's when it's ready to bake. And tomorrow morning that'll be ready to bake.
But
We're going to
because
leave
you're
it
doing
overnight, so I'm going to slow it down.
yeah, because you can't check it
Yes.
overnight because you don't want to get up in
Yes.
the middle of the night.
Yeah, and
So-
you can speed it up by putting it in the oven just with the pilot light. and that can speed it up a little bit.
So if it were winter time, you might do that? Okay.
Yes. If it was cold, if you're under a bit of time pressure and you wanted to just speed it up a little bit. Because I don't do a really long, some people do a really long ferment, and it will have more of a sour and heavy taste. Whereas I'm not doing really long ferments. I haven't tried. Some people will put it in the fridge and let it ferment for, I don't know, 12 to 16 hours. But I like that lighter, fresher taste, not so much the heavy and the really sour taste.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I'm keen to get some butter and we'll try a piece.
Try it.
Great. Good. Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
bye for now.
So it's the next morning and we've come back to Mandy's place because there was so much to film here. And can you
Yes.
remind me where we're at? So what's this one?
This is the ciabatta loaf that we mixed last night with the starter. So it had 2 cups of water, about 200 grams up to 250 grams of the active starter, 3.5 cups of the baker's flour and 2 teaspoons of salt. And I put it in a cooler bag with an esky brick just to slow the process down, because it would have reached its peak too early and you want to catch it when it's at its peak. This has gone slightly past its peak, just timing wise, that's just the way it is when you're working with a live culture.
Okay, so Janine's filming again. Thank you, Janine. She's our guest
So-
filmer at the trail. So how do you know that's gone a bit too far?
Okay, because it's starting to sink a little bit.
Yes.
And I've got smaller bubbles, so I would have liked it. I would have caught it when it was up higher and nice big bubbles, like a kid blowing bubble with bubble gum. That's
big
just
bubbles.
before it's gonna burst. But hopefully, I think it's still going to be fine. So we're going to pour it. It's more like a batter. And you're going to pour it into a slipper shape. And don't worry so much if they're uneven. Sometimes you're going to get a bigger loaf. And we're not going to need that to sit and rise again. And I should have had we're going to use an egg.
Let me ask now, if it's gone too far, like it did, what's the impact on the bread?
It's going to make it a little bit denser and a little bit heavier.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that this is still...
You can still eat it, it's just not...
Yeah, it's just
not
going to be a little bit...
perfect.
A bit heavier.
Result.
Here we go. So brushing it with the egg is going to give it a really nice shiny finish. So just gently, so you can see that it's spread and run a little bit, so it's going to be a flatter sort of loaf. And ideally you want it to have nice big, not really huge holes, but some nice big air bubbles. So I guess it's a little bit like a crumpet. A crumpet mixture. See there, you've got a beautiful, nice, big bubble, like a kid's blowing a bubble gum, and it's just about to burst.
And then that's why we see the bubble in the finished product, where it's...
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're air bubbles.
Because we had some when we visited last
See, there's
night,
another.
which was delicious.
And when I took the lid off this morning, it looked like it was just a little volcano, with a little. Call them. So these are, you can put either poppies, you can put nigella seeds on top, or this is, what is this again? Sesame seeds.
Sesame seeds.
Right, so we're going to have it in a hot oven again, 200 degrees. So I've had it, I'm going to turn it down to 200, and I know that I can fit 2 of these side by side.
So it was preheating at a 250?
It was preheating. Hey Siri, set the timer for 30 minutes.
Your timer is set for 30 minutes.
It's very obedient.
There she is. Very helpful.
Okay, good. So
Right,
we will...
now we have
Open
the,
up
now
into-
we can And so this is the starter then that we fed last night.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So we can use this same bowl. We can economise. And my... Just bear with me while I get my ingredient. Flour.
It sounds like rain out there, Mandy.
We did get a shower last night, so just a nice little shower.
Need a bit of rain in Samford Valley at the moment. It's a little bit brown, don't it?
So the ciabatta I used cup measures, just because the recipe came with the cup measures and I stuck with it. But this loaf I'm going to use weights. So I tear it, so start at 0. And I'm going to roughly take 250 to 200 to 250 grams of the starter. Now this is the active starter. Sometimes I can be a bit loosey-goosey.
So that says it's 180. Are you?
180? Yeah. Actually, you know what? That comes to the end of this episode. Right, that starter is all gone now.
Okay.
I could have left a little bit behind, fed it again if I wanted to make pizza or make naan bread or crackers or anything like that.
Okay.
And fed it and then made something else a little bit later in the day. So now, oh gosh,
That's way over.
that's 350. So
Yeah.
I might.
Sounds
Yeah.
like it. You hear the sound of the rain. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay. Hadn't really
You would get more rain.
thought this out.
You'd get more rain up here. Obviously, it's tropical here.
Yeah, this is normally the dry. This is normally the dry season. Okay, so I'm going to tear it again, and 270 mils of water. So filtered water.
Morning, Clem.
270. 2 teaspoons of salt.
You've made this a lot. You're not being too exact, are you?
No.
Even though you're pretending to be exact here, I can see that you're going over.
I wasn't exact.
You've got
So
some kind of inner bread
I have, yes.
goddess that is guiding you, I think.
So Nigella seeds, so inch of those, and a hand. So this is flax seed or linseed.
So this is making
A
your mixed grain
Yes.
sourdough.
So we filmed the end of that, and
Yes.
which I cooked in the schlemmer top.
That's right, which we had the opportunity
Pumpkin
to eat.
seeds or
Some
pepitas.
butter, which was delicious. Can you
Pita.
see inside there, Janine? That looks wonderful.
And now 500 grams. And I hope I've got 500 grams. So tear it again. Go back to 0.
Hey, so you don't need to sift the flour, nothing like that?
I haven't, I never have.
Great, that's one less thing to have to worry about.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Alright. Where's my special tool? So that's got all the ingredients in it now. You could break up the starter and mix it with the water, but it's all going to combine. So first of all, you're going to just mix it all together.
Do you need to mix by hand? Could you put this in a
You
machine
could
of
put it
some
in a
kind?
machine with a dough hook, but I find it quite therapeutic, and it's really not hard to be mixing it by hand. This is an amazing tool.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to mix it until just it all combines, and you might even get a little bit of flour that's sitting at the bottom, and then you're going to leave it for about 20 minutes, and I think they call it autolyzing, where the dough is going to, or the flour gets time to absorb the moisture, and then if you feel that you need to add a little bit of extra water, that's probably a good time, just a few drops at a time. Or moisten your hands, and then when we get to the point of mixing it, I'll show you the mixing technique that I've found works best for me. So that's really not hard work.
Okay, so at that point
So
you just mix
I
it
leave
to
that.
combine. That's
Just
what
leave,
you're doing.
yeah, mix that
it.
to combine it, and then just so that it doesn't dry out, and leave it for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
But it could be 30 minutes, it could be 40 minutes, just roughly, yeah.
Because what are we looking for when we
When
after the 20 minutes or 40 minutes? What's the visual sign that we know that it's done the next step?
just so that it's absorbed the moisture and it's had time to get an accurate picture of what the moisture level is like.
Oh, that's I need more info from you. Will it look different?
No,
Like, how do you know then to
No.
leave it for 20 minutes versus 40 minutes? How would you?
look,
It's hard, isn't it? Because you've got so much
well,
knowledge.
probably
in
a
your
minute,
head for making.
probably a minimum of 20 minutes.
Okay.
But I've been caught up. I'm a bit like a butterfly. I get caught up with something else, and it's been an hour, and
Okay.
it doesn't do it any. It doesn't do it any
Okay.
harm.
All right. So not to
Yes.
panic. It's not.
Don't
too
panic. Don't panic. But roughly, leave it for 20 minutes. That'll give it time to absorb some of the moisture,
Okay.
and then you'll have your first mix, and then you can see, do I have to add a little bit? But that's why I weigh it, and I'm reasonably close in with the water and the flour.
So that there's not
I
much
don't worry.
adding afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. But the humidity affects the moisture level of the
Yeah.
flour.
Okay.
Can do. So
Yeah.
if it's a little bit dry, you'll put some water on your hands and just work a little bit more into it. You don't want it that you've got a lot of flour sitting on the bottom.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard to incorporate.
Yeah. So you would get to know it in your area.
Yes.
So we're you're tropical here, we're subtropical down in
Yes.
Samford. We would get to know
Get
what
the
it's like
feel.
in our kitchen.
Yes.
On our kitchen bench.
Yes.
And with a bit of trial and error.
Yes. In winter, it might feel slightly different to summer, and when it's really humid. But don't ever panic.
Don't panic. It's a living thing.
Panic.
That's
It's a
what's
living
lovely.
organism. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll
Okay,
come
that's
back
it for
later
now.
and
We'll come back in a little while.
all right.
Okay. Boom, we're like a butterfly.
We've got so much going on here in the kitchen. This morning I'm distracting you, Mandy, with talking about
The timer
Yeah,
just
and-
went off, and I'm thinking, why did that timer go off? And
That-
this is our ciabatta loaf that is ready. It's nice and
oh, look at that.
oh my goodness! Thank goodness I put the timer on.
Yes. Well, that might have been a disastrous
Wow.
end.
And I think that,
Oh.
that's turned out quite normal, quite nice.
They look great.
Yes, we've got lots happening here.
There is. And so we are also,
now.
what was the next
Switching
stage?
back.
Switching back. We're going to have so much fun joining these videos.
Right.
All these.
So this has autolyzed for longer than the 20 minutes, but that's no problem. So I'm going to use wet hands. I just did a lot of Googling about mixing the bread, and so this is the best technique that I've found. So you're going to use wet hands and stretch and fold. And I don't know, I've come up with a bit of a unique, sort of like a twist and there's a little tiny bit of flour in the bottom, and we're going to give it a little bit of a mix and then leave it for another 20 minutes, or if you get distracted, longer. And that's it for about 20 minutes. So it's not kneading it, within an inch of its life. It's about 3 sets of stretches and folds. And then on the third one, the texture is going to change, and it's going to be more silky, soft, and smoother.
So the reason that we're mixing is stretching
Stretching the glutens.
Okay.
So in the first stretch and fold, it's quite tight.
Okay.
So it's more a pulling from the bottom. So wet hands, rather a pulling from the bottom and folding it under,
Okay.
and drawing any of the flour that's left, and just combining a little bit more. The second stretch and fold is going to be a little bit looser, and the third one it's going to be quite nice and soft. And then you're going to go into the bulk ferment. And so this will be ready to bake this afternoon, probably by about 3 or 4 o'clock.
And when it does the bulk ferment, that's when it's just sitting there and it's
sitting.
having its fermentation time.
Yes. Yes. So if I was doing this overnight, because it's going to be 12 hours, I don't want it to go past its peak. So I would put it in the cooler bag like I did with the ciabatta.
Yes.
With an ice brick to slow it down.
To slow it down.
If I wanted to speed it up, I would put it in the oven with a pilot light on.
Okay.
And then it might be ready a little bit after lunch.
Okay.
So
It
you
sounds
can play
like
with
there's
it.
a lot of information, but it's probably just that we're doing about 3 or 4 different things at the
Yes.
same time at the moment.
Yeah.
For you, you've been doing it for a while. Is it something that it just starts to click after you've
Yes.
done it a few times?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you get a feel for the dough when it's at its peak, when it's ready by looking at it.
Okay. So for somebody starting out,
Get yourself a buddy.
okay.
Yeah, get
Yeah.
yourself a mentor or a buddy. FaceTime or all get together and make a loaf together with some people and just get that sense of community and sharing and then when you become proficient, go and teach someone else.
Thank you.
Yeah.